Marisa,
Yeah.
you want to say a couple of words?
Shall I enter?
Yeah, just an introduction, yeah.
Okay, good afternoon. Thank you very much for coming, and especially on Saturday in the evening, we appreciate very much. And as you know, Mr. Achim Steiner, he has been here for the last 3 days. He had a very, very busy schedule, meetings with many senior government officials, including His Excellency the President. Today, this morning, he visited a number of project sites and then met with the number of independent constitutional commissions, political parties, and UN country team and UNDP staff. So it's been a very tight and busy schedule, but a very engaging and productive trip. So maybe I pass it to you now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bishop. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen of the media. Thank you for your patience. As our resident coordinator for the United Nations just shared with you, this afternoon concludes my 3-day visit that I have undertaken this week here to Zimbabwe at the invitation of His Excellency the President, Ganagwa. And also, I want to begin by expressing my appreciation for the warmth and warm welcome that I have been given, both by representatives of the government of Zimbabwe, but also representatives of civil society, of the business community, and faith leaders. All of them have been prepared to meet with me, to share with me both their perspectives, their concerns, their outlook for what happens next in Zimbabwe. And let me begin by saying that my visit marks the first visit by a senior UN official for quite a number of years, and in this particular moment it is also a signal that in the United Nations we have taken the President's call for free, fair and credible elections with no violence as a very serious signal that Zimbabwe is at a crossroads. The preparatory process for these elections have been supported by the United Nations and also here in country in particular by the United Nations Development Programme, as they are also being supported by both different departments within government, civil society organizations and international partners. Our interest and our commitment is to help the people of Zimbabwe to prepare for a free, fair and credible election without violence, ensuring that this election is first and foremost an election for Zimbabwe, by Zimbabweans, and therefore to also be guaranteed and implemented by Zimbabweans. It was my principal interest to meet with representatives of government, but also, as our resident coordinator just mentioned, with a broad section of Zimbabwean society, from the constitutionally mandated commissions, the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission, clearly with a key role to play over the coming months, but also with Zimbabwe's Human Rights Commission, the National Peace and Reconciliation Commission, the Gender Commission. This morning I also had the privilege of meeting with leaders from across the spectrum of civil society organizations and the business community. And in addition to that, I also met with representatives of all political parties represented in Parliament. All this was part of the invitation that I had received to meet and engage through the United Nations in this preparatory process that will help Zimbabwe achieve a milestone in its own journey towards economic recovery, national unity, and therefore a vision and a perspective for the future development of this nation. The United Nations is a major partner to Zimbabwe and its people for decades. And just in the year 2017, the United Nations mobilized with its development partners over $400 million of investments across different sectors that you can look at in a moment in our press release where they are outlined in more detail. Within those over $400 million, UNDP accounts for investments of $200 million. Therefore, it is a very significant partner, both to government and to many organizations within the country. Our focus is, at this very moment, to contribute to this preparatory process of a free, fair, and credible election. But we are also engaged now and will engage in a more active manner also in the future in the economic recovery. This clearly is critical to the people of Zimbabwe and to the economy as a whole. I do not need to recite to you the figures and the harsh reality in terms of poverty, in terms of constraints in many economic sectors, and therefore the challenges that this nation has faced for many years. The international community of development partners, but also investors across the world, have paid attention to the President's commitment that he made at the World Economic Forum in Davos, and since then on many other occasions. It was there that I first met with him in January and committed to visiting Zimbabwe to show the strong support that we will provide to this nation in the preparations of an election, but with the perspective particularly of economic recovery. Zimbabwe is a nation with enormous potential, beginning with its citizens, an educated population that has enormous potential to lead this nation into a different development future. The sectors from agriculture to mining to power to tourism, just to mention a few, represent significant potentials both in terms of domestic opportunities but also international investment opportunities. In my discussions with His Excellency the President, but also with a range of ministers within government, I offered also the support of the United Nations system and of the United Nations Development Programme in assisting government in looking at the opportunities for investment, particularly with a view to ensuring that small-scale farmers, small and medium-scale enterprises, which currently represent the backbone of Zimbabwe's economy, will also have the attention in a future economic recovery strategy. It is essential that people's livelihoods and their ability to earn an income, to find jobs, remains at the center of Zimbabwe's development strategy. International investments, international pledges of support by countries and development partners will play a critical role, but as His Excellency the President and the government has repeatedly stated, the election has become a vital milestone on this road to recovery. It is our commitment within the United Nations and the international community, I believe, with growing interest, to both support this preparatory process for the election as a way to re-engage and therefore enable the citizens of Zimbabwe to have a more positive outlook on the future than they have had in recent years. Let me end by saying that I also took the time to visit a voter registration center where the new biometric voter registration system was in action. It was my privilege to witness a 19-year-old Zimbabwean man registering to vote for the first time in his life. A tremendous responsibility on the part of the Electoral Commission to ensure the transparency of this electoral process, a unique right of every Zimbabwean citizen to exercise their right to vote, and also an opportunity for us in the international community to be of assistance to Zimbabwe in this process. This morning I also took time to leave Harare and visit a polyclinic outside of Harare where we also could provide a demonstration of what the support that we already provide in many parts of the Zimbabwean development process is taking place. In this polyclinic, we have, together with the support of the Global Fund that is of particular assistance to Zimbabwe in providing antiretroviral treatments for HIV-infected persons, has now facilitated the installation of a solar PV photovoltaic power source. This will enable this polyclinic to have a cold chain for vaccines, to provide lighting when women give birth to children at night, and also enable that center to function much more effectively. This is just one of over 400 health centers that we are now providing with this kind of technology that will hopefully make what has been already a strong track record in the health sector provide even better services to the citizens of Zimbabwe in the years to come. I think I will stop here. I have tried to provide you with a sense of both the agenda that I also debriefed His Excellency the President this morning on. I was received with a very open and engaging, constructive dialogue, and I think the commitment of the United Nations and the role that it can play in the future directions of Zimbabwe remain as strong as I have seen them, and therefore augurs well for our cooperation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Maybe we can take a few questions. Please introduce yourself. Yep.
My name is Jabulani Simple. I write for the Star newspaper. Do you appreciate the concerns of the commissions such as the Zimbabwe Human Rights Commission and the Gender Commission to discharge their constitutional mandate? For example, the Lekki Technical as a satisfied man. Thank you.
Let me begin by noting that I first of all recognize the decision by the government to implement the provisions and mandates of the constitution that this country adopted and developed for itself. And in that constitution, there are independent institutions that have been called for and mandated, amongst them the Zimbabwe Human Rights Commission, the Electoral Commission, the Gender Commission. When I met with the chairs of these commissions, it was quite clear to me that government has given a strong signal of support in establishing them. Commissioners have been appointed and some resources have been provided. Clearly, leaders of all the commissions, I think I can say, noted that they are operating under constrained conditions. But so is the nation as a whole. So I think we should view at the moment, first of all, the decision to appoint these commissions, to provide funding from government to them, as a very positive signal. And I believe that in due course, they will also receive additional support from government. In the meantime, however, I can say that we are, as UNDP, already supporting some of these commissions, and therefore we are committed to helping in that process of institution building, because we consider these commissions to be an integral part of sound governance, of open government, and also of citizens' ability to hold governments accountable. Therefore, the role of these commissions and their future role in the political process of Zimbabwe are to us of great importance. And I can only say that looking also at our resident coordinator, I think our support and engagement with these commissions is likely to grow. Let me say that with particular attention to the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission, as you know, UNDP and the UN family have mobilized more than $10 million of investment already to support the preparatory process for the elections, and we stand ready to respond to additional needs because clearly, as the United Nations, we have the opportunity and the possibility to assist Zimbabwe in ensuring what the President has called for, a free, fair, and credible election.
Please.
Yes, my name is Costa Ngomu from 263 Chat. I just want to make a reference to the story which came out in the Chronicle, the state media, that 24 hours after your arrival, you were so much impressed by Zimbabwe's state of preparedness in holding free and fair elections. I just wanted to find out from you, you mentioned about the constraints which were raised by the independent commissions, you know, being part of the issues which Zimbabwe is facing at the moment, obviously is going to prejudice the credibility part of the elections. But at the same time, I wanted to find out what exactly impressed you. And would you also care to share with us the issues which were raised by the opposition? You know, the issue of reforms have been made for a long period. And giving you one as an illustration, the monopoly which the ruling party enjoys on the state media, and is one of the issues which is happening here in the country. So I want to believe that it's going to prejudice the credibility part of the elections. So would you also care enough to share with us the issues you were raised by the opposition and the part of what exactly impressed you when you arrived?
Let me begin by reminding all of us that we are in the month of March. It is only a few months ago that Zimbabwe passed through a major political transition, rupture, and change. It is, I think, fair to say that in the signal that His Excellency the President has given to the people of Zimbabwe to hold free, fair, and credible elections, many Zimbabweans also welcome this as a commitment. I think it is also clear that in the international community, this clear commitment has set the country and also those who wish to partner with it a high threshold, because a free, fair and credible election with no violence is a complex undertaking, especially in a short period of time. My initial comment that I made was related in particular to the speed and the scale with which the voter registration process has been conducted. We should remember that by this week, if I understand correctly, more than 5.4 million voters have been registered with biometric data. And as we all know, without a voter's roll, there cannot be an election. This is the first fundamental building block, the foundation upon which subsequent steps also are taking place. But my recognition was that I consider that process to have been significant, both in terms of scale, speed, and integrity, as no one that I have spoken to has so far questioned the integrity of the establishment of the voter's roll. Now, let me just emphasize, because you asked me what kind of concerns were expressed also. They fall into a number of categories. Perhaps the most significant one is the enabling environment. Elections that are meant to be free and fair require a number of conditions: free public discourse, equitable access to media and communications, no intimidation, transparency. A particular issue that was mentioned by some is also the auditing of the voter's roll, because remember the biometric voter registration process is still in progress, and following that there will be a deduplication process, as it is called. I don't want to get too technical, but then the voter's roll will be available for inspection to the public. So I think these are critical steps that will further strengthen the credibility of that preparatory process. I have not come to Zimbabwe to validate or comment on the integrity of the whole process because it is just in progress. But at this point in time, that is a significant milestone. I think it has raised confidence amongst all players in the country that one key element is falling into place. Other issues that have been mentioned also relate to, ballot papers, for example, or the commitment by all parties to adhere to a code that would commit every party leader. And, there is a remarkable number of parties in Zimbabwe. I don't think I have ever been to a country with a population of less than 20, 30 million people that has over 100 parties contesting. But, maybe that's a good sign for democracy. But at the end of the day, what is critical is that right now the citizens of Zimbabwe expect every political leader and contestant to commit equally to a free, fair, credible, and non-violent election. I think that's an important step, and it is one that is currently being discussed. I also was briefed and briefed in turn and was informed by government that the review and the introduction of a new electoral law that aligns the electoral law with the Constitution is underway, and clearly that is a critical step also in addressing the current situation where existing provisions would not be in conformity with the Constitution. That electoral law is in the second reading stage and will then go to committee. And my understanding is that in the very near future, Parliament will be able to vote on this electoral law. So let me leave it at that. I could go into more detail, but I, in very detailed discussions with parties in Parliament, but also with civil society leaders, learned about their concerns, their recommendations. I briefed His Excellency the President also on some of these issues, and found him to very, very receptive, and also with ministers, whether in the Justice Department and Foreign Affairs, very clear about some of these steps that need to be taken. Having said that, it is in the nature of opposition parties, of civil society organizations, to be skeptical and to wish to have evidence and proof. So I think the next few weeks are an immensely important time for all actors in the political arena of Zimbabwe to come together. I can only repeat my appeal that I have made in all my meetings to, notwithstanding the differences and the concerns and the skepticism, that all the players, and particularly the leaders in the political arena, but also in civil society and business, should seek every opportunity to come together and shape the electoral process, because only then can Zimbabwe be guaranteed a free, fair, and credible election.
Let's take somebody else, please.
Just last one.
Oh.
I just want to, you know what happened, the allegations which were leveled against, the Russians regarding the U.S. elections, which happened in 2016. They are allegations that they were subject to hacking. They were hacked by the Russians. How Trump was, all those are allegations because I don't have proof, but they are allegations that he was linked to the Russians. You understand? So looking at how big the United States is and how giant it is in terms of commanding technological infrastructure. When it comes to Zimbabwe now adopting the BVR, which is a technological operation, how confident are you with BVR that it won't be also subjected to hacking?
Let me first of all say, I do not wish to engage in any conspiracy theories. This is for nations to resolve amongst each other. There are a lot of accusations flying in the public arena, in the media, in the social networks. As you know, I, as a United Nations official, am mandated to comment and to work on issues that are done at the request of member states. Our request that we work under right now is the request to assist with elections in Zimbabwe. In fact, UNDP on average supports an election around the world every 2 weeks. This is very much part of what we do. It's part of our commitment to the countries we serve. It's part of our commitment to strengthen governance, democracy, accountability, and therefore this is not something that we are not familiar with. I also want to be clear. We live in very strange times where technology is allowing all sorts of things to happen. So will you find me sitting here today and say no system can be hacked that we are, in a sense, working with in different contexts? Clearly, that would be naive. On the other hand, I have no reason at the moment to believe that the system that is being used here, which has been procured through a transparent process, through companies that are known, and also that system has been used before in elections that we have also been associated with, carries any more or less risk than any other option that is available. Our commitment to Zimbabweans and to working with the government is to ensure the maximum integrity possible. So unless there is evidence or proof of tampering or of any other suggestion that would put into question the integrity of the system, I would say to Zimbabweans, at this point in time, you have the opportunity to work with a state-of-the-art platform, and we will continue to work with all parties to ensure that that confidence is maintained. Should any reason arise to doubt that, you can rest assured we will also be the first ones to speak up for that. Thank you. Any other questions? Yes, there's another gentleman.
My name is from Steiner. The former President Robert Mugabe claimed that the current government is unconstitutional and illegitimate. What do you make of those remarks?
I have no comment on the specific statement that former President Mugabe has made. I have come to Zimbabwe in order to help the people of Zimbabwe, its government, its citizens, to take the next step in its journey towards the future. As I think the government itself has said, every citizen in Zimbabwe is free to speak up and to also make statements. At this point in time, our focus, our priority is to help Zimbabweans elect their future government, and above all to enable the nation to emerge from a period of economic decline, of great suffering, of impoverishment, and look to the future of opportunities. And that is all I have to say on that issue. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for being here on a Saturday afternoon, and I wish you a nice evening and weekend. Thank you. Tatenda.
Thank you very much.
Somebody still has a recording device here. Bye-bye.